Let's get started as in right now. Good evening, folks. Thanks. I was actually going to get you to do the intro. I said that Sarah earlier on to do the intro. Right, it was too late. Good evening, folks. Thanks for coming in. Hope you're all safe and well as we move into another week. But tonight I'm joined by my lovely co-host, the very talented Carol Tracy.
Oh, bless you. I'll pay you later.
I accept all major forms of currency, PayPal, PIN numbers, all that kind of stuff. But, so tonight we are carrying on with our Tudor chat. I'm not going to ask Teresa how she is because I already know. So it'll be a waste of time, because I know she's doing.
I'm fine. I'm well. I'm hot.
You're on the right side of the grass, as some folks say.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, shall we go on, Tracy? You just want to sit and laugh and gabber.
Yeah, no, let's go on.
Aye, let's go on. Aye, so tonight we are going to be carrying on a Tudor series. Everybody's been watching, we know we've already covered Henry VIII, 6 wives. Oh, there we go. There's a wife sticking in already. Look, to the beautiful Tracy. There's no handsome or anything in there. You see, there's no handsome in between the word and Scott. It's just Scott. You know what I mean? But we'll let that one slide.
God bless her.
Anyway.
She can come again.
Moving on. So she's your new bestie, aye? So tonight we've already covered Henry's wives, met some members behind the scenes. Wolsey, Cromwell, people like that, Thomas More. So tonight we are going to be chatting about Henry's first daughter,
That's right.
Mary Tudor, Mary the First, or as she was later become to be known as Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary, indeed. Yeah, absolutely.
She was not a woman to be messed with. So she was born in the 15th. Wait a minute, I've got notes.
Oh, have you? Well done.
I do write things down occasionally, I do write occasionally. She was born on the 18th of February, 1516. She was the daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. As we all know, Henry wanted a son. A male heir was a major thing back then. So I dare say he was a wee bit disappointed when Catherine gave birth to a girl.
Yeah.
She was
marriages as well.
Aye, she had a fair share of bother.
Yeah.
And that she was actually. It was actually Elizabeth Pole that looked after her.
Yeah.
No, Elizabeth Pole, Margaret Pole. I'm doing well enough.
I'll chip in a minute.
You feel free to jump in at any time. The ironic thing was it was actually Margaret Pole who was charged to look after her. And Margaret Pole, as we know, ended up later down the line being executed.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Scott. She was Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon's only surviving child. And she was raised as a princess, as she would be in a royal household. She received an excellent education. She was trained in languages. She was trained in music, in culture. She was very good at archery, apparently, that I learned quite recently. Apparently she was very, very good at sort of sports, a bit like her father was. But sadly, her life changed dramatically when Henry VIII annulled his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. We know that he broke away from the Roman Catholic Church. We've spoken about that many a time in our previous chats. And so therefore, poor Mary was declared illegitimate and she had to live in various royal households. One of them was actually led by Lady Anne Shelton, who happened to be the aunt of Anne Boleyn. So this was very difficult. This was very difficult for young Mary because obviously Anne Boleyn was the cause of the demise of her mother. Her mother being sent away, being divorced, breaking away from the Catholic Church. And young Mary had all the values of Catholicism that her mother had. So this was incredibly difficult for her. And she was eventually forced to serve in the household of her half-sister, Elizabeth. So this was obviously Anne Boleyn's daughter with Henry VIII. But despite all of this, she remained a staunch Catholic. But Henry, her own father, and many others threatened her on many occasions, didn't they, with execution, his own daughter, because of her beliefs. It was really quite a frightening time for her because she was sent away. She couldn't be with her father. She couldn't see her mother. She was stripped of all of her title. She lived in a household where she was basically a servant with people that weren't always nice to her. So it was it was a really, really difficult time, wasn't it? So I'll just go over the timelines. We will go back over this and we will talk about Mary, but I'll go over some of the timelines. So between 1553 and 1558, following the death of Edward VI, which was her very young half-brother, who was king, if you remember, at a very young age, and the council members helped him. After he died, she rallied around because she really felt that it was her right to be queen. So she rallied around, got lots of support, lots of people behind her. She managed to gather a huge gathering. I think it was at Framlingham Castle in Suffolk, where they had a huge rally. Who's that?
That's Craig. Hello, gorgeous, and Tracy.
I'm getting all confident tonight. I'm happy about that.
No, he's calling me gorgeous. Hello, gorgeous, and Tracy.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, I'm not speaking to him now then.
And Laura's just popping in to say hello to the beautiful Tracy and hello to the ever so handsome Gaffer.
Hello, Laura. Lovely to see you.
Obviously heard what I was saying.
Obviously, clearly. Clearly, you've got your own fan club.
The thing that I found out earlier on was that obviously Edward was her half brother.
Yeah.
Here we go. Give the cat some milk. Tracy's always gorgeous.
Oh, you can come again, Craig. Thank you. I'll pay you later as well.
You're going to end up skint.
I will be.
You'll need to sell your new house.
I will. Oh my God, yeah.
But what I found out earlier on, which I never knew in the past, was that Edward actually, when he became very, very ill, he did not want Mary to take over the throne.
Yeah, that's right. Hence Lady Jane Grey. Yeah, absolutely.
He was very much against her, and Elizabeth as well.
Yeah.
He didn't want either of them to.
I know. It was really, really difficult times, wasn't it? It was really sad because they were siblings at the end of the day and they were all separated. And in some ways, they sort of became enemies, didn't they, when you think about it? But Lady Jane Grey, as we know, was the cousin who was brought in. And, Mary gathered, we talked about that in the last chapter. So if you go back and look at the chapter, they're all in sort of date order, aren't they? So people will find them if they're interested and want to see the whole story that we've talked about. But basically, yeah, she gathered all of these people. She had huge support. She managed to overthrow Lady Jane Grey, who sadly, as we know, lost her head. And then Mary became queen in 1553, having gathered much support and taking power. People wanted her to be queen. They wanted her to, to be they felt that she was the rightful owner of the throne because she was the first child of Henry VIII, whether she was a male or not. Basically, a lot of support behind her, wanted her on the throne. So she returned from Suffolk. She returned to London with this great support, massive following. And then on the 3rd of August in 1553, that's when she returned to London. She was then later crowned queen. So she actually got the position that she rightfully felt she deserved. Now, interestingly, although she was a staunch Catholic, she didn't want to come in initially all guns blazing. So she kind of went along with the Protestant rules for quite some time before she then wanted to start to make changes. So she tried to be very diplomatic and very generous with people on how she ruled initially. So Mary Tudor, she became Mary I of England. She possessed a range of intellectual, social and political skills. She was shaped by her royal upbringing and her education. So she had all of the sort of knowledge and the wisdom and the practice behind her before she was shunned from court. So she still had all of that, you know, about her. She was fluent in Latin, Spanish, and she spoke some French as well. So she was very talented. She was a skilled musician, and she played something called the virginals, which are a type of keyboard instrument, apparently. And that was something that she was very good at. I mean, you've probably heard of that expression, but I actually didn't know what that was. But it's a type of keyboard instrument that she was very accomplished at. She was also a very good singer. She was well versed in etiquette. She was very diplomatic for the reasons that I said previously. She didn't just come in initially all guns blazing, you know, trying to get rid of the Protestants. Although obviously we know later on down the line that did change. She was actively involved in council meetings and decision making as Queen, because she was highly intelligent. She had learnt so much from her father before he had obviously turned on her. She showed decisive leadership during the succession crisis of 1553, when she was rallying all of that support to overthrow Lady Jane Grey. She was able to command loyalty and organise political support when she was under great pressure, actually. Because if you think, she was the first female queen actually led the country. So there had been queens before, queens of England before, but she was the first ruler. So it was really, she was quite a trailblazer, really. It was quite unique. She had a very deep understanding of Catholic theology and doctrine. She showed great resilience and endurance during difficult circumstances. If you think what happened to her in her childhood, you know, it made her quite strong and quite determined. She understood the importance of European alliances, particularly with Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. And she showed great political ability. So she was very well-rounded at quite a young age and very capable of ruling the country. And she had huge support behind her, which was very important. She was she was well-trained in the skills expected of a Renaissance monarch, though her effectiveness was sometimes limited by circumstance and challenges of her reign, because like anybody, she had the initial support, and then people start, you know, turning against the religion, turning against the politics. So she had to face quite a few challenges. And then eventually Mary aimed to restore Roman Catholicism in England. She revoked Protestant laws. She re-established ties with the Pope. So these were huge steps forward for her to reinstate everything that Henry VIII had sort of thrown away when he divorced Catherine of Aragon. However, her reign became known for the persecution of Protestants, didn't it? And ironically, she executed around 300 people, and she earned the name Bloody Mary. But when you think about it, her father before her and Elizabeth after her executed so many more people than Mary did. It was almost like a bit of a smear campaign, wasn't it, really, to make her sound worse than she was.
But when you compare it to Henry, I mean, Henry executed the estimate about 72,000 people.
I know.
Over his reign. 72,000. You know, Mary, 300 odd. But just getting back to you know, when she first became queen and she tried to follow the Protestant, you know, try to go by the Protestant ways and what have we. Do you think it was part of a plan on her part? You know, because obviously when she knew, you know, when Edward passed away, you've got Lady Jane Grey on the throne. Mary's in the background thinking, you know, she's not going to sit in that throne long because that throne's mine, basically. And do you think it was maybe part of Mary's plan? You know, I'll play nice for X amount of time, and then I'll bring the hammer down. I mean, I might be wrong, but I'm just kind of looking at her point of view.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right. She had a lot of support from both sides, really, because, you know, from Catholics, but even some Protestants were keen to have her, because originally and initially they thought she was going to keep the Protestant faith. So she was actually very clever when you think about it, when she came into power, because she did go along with it for a while, and then suddenly she started forging all of these alliances, and, you know, as we say, back with the Pope to make that connection with Catholicism, and then suddenly it all started changing. And yeah, absolutely.
I think that, and she played the nice card to
Yeah,
maybe
she did.
gain more
Mm.
support, until she decided, right, time's up,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
this is how it's going to be from now on. Because she did try and reinstate everything that had been stolen for the church.
Yeah, yeah,
She did
absolutely.
try to do that, but Parliament kind of got in the way.
Mm.
They interfered with her plans for that. But no, she was very, very clever.
She was clever, highly intelligent, like her father, because her father was. And her mother was as well. Her mother was Catherine of Aragon was very bright, very intelligent, very knowledgeable about politics and religion, because she used to, advise Henry VIII. He used to take, advice from his wife. So Mary had inherited all of that knowledge, that wisdom, that intelligent, ability. But she kind of knew how to play the court in a way, so that's why she came in gently and slowly before she started to change things. So,
well, she's seen it.
Sorry,
Tracy, on you go.
No, you carry on. What were you going to say?
No, I just seen she's learned for everybody the passion of her mother, her father, etc.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
obviously all these different people had their own different views, and a lot of them didn't agree with each other, were always falling out. And so she's taking everybody's views on board, and she's learning the game, basically.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
is my view. She's sitting in the back, she's learning the game of how to, how to play A off of B and B off of C, etc., to make things go happen. And I mean, you think about it, she must have had a big branch to burn, because she's born, she's shunned by her father, she sees her mother, she's she kind of grows up being bounced about like a tennis ball everywhere.
Yeah, I know, awful.
And then her half brother dies, and she still she's shunned. Her own father on quite a few occasions hinted at the threats to execute her.
Yeah, I know, that must have been horrific, mustn't it?
And I think we said before in previous shows, if you take away all the royal stuff and kings and queens and everything, at the end of the day, it was like father and daughter. And she must have been sitting there saying, thinking, my father he's going to execute me.
It must have been horrible. And she was so devoted to her mother, so devoted to her faith. And if you think she had royal status right up until she was 17, and then everything changed for her, and that must have been so traumatic, because that's a really tender young age, isn't it, for that to happen? Even though I know she was very mature and she was very wise, but that was such a difficult thing for her to have to deal with, to be separated from her mother, for her father to be threatening to execute her. I mean, it was just all horrific for her, absolutely horrific. So she came back strong and ready to, mean business, I think, definitely. So in 1554, she married Philip II of Spain. So this marriage was unpopular in England due to the fears of Spanish influence. People just didn't really want it. Mary was 37. He was around 11 years younger. And she absolutely loved and adored Philip, but it was not reciprocated, because he saw the marriage as more of a political duty. So although he was very supportive of her, he didn't love her, but she was said to absolutely adore him. So that was quite difficult, wasn't it? That must have been very difficult for her. And they spent a lot of time apart as well. And she had a lot of false pregnancies. She experienced false pregnancies, and these were really significant to her, because it was very personal and very political in disappointments, because she failed to produce, again, that Catholic heir. And she was thought for so many months that she was pregnant, and it ended up being like a phantom pregnancy. And this happened to her at least twice, where she went into confinement. She was excited about a potential royal birth. All preparations were being made for a male heir, because it was always assumed it was going to be a male heir. So poor Mary went through all of this trauma when it turned out that she wasn't pregnant at all. So she had a very hard time before she was queen, but also during the time that she was queen as well. She was close, though, eventually to a lot of Catholic advisors and to the clergy. So Mary formed quite close working relationships with senior figures of the church, such as Stephen Gardiner and Reginald
Mhm.
Pole. And these relationships really were deeply rooted with the shared religious beliefs. They really, supported each other. They really supported Queen Mary in her mission to restore Catholicism, because that's what they wanted. And actually, believe it or not, those two souls that I've just mentioned, they both died of natural causes. They didn't end up being executed, losing their head, or being burnt. They actually did both die, but they were still.
That makes a change, doesn't it?
It's quite a happy ending, isn't it? I know, it really does make a change. But as for friends, Queen Mary I, she had a relatively small and carefully guarded circle of friends, shaped by royalty and religion, basically. She was extremely close to her mother, Catherine of Aragon, and as we know what happened to her, and it must have just broken her heart to be separated from her, and then her mother dying, basically, of what was assumed to be a broken heart. She remained devoted to Catherine, even after the divorce from Henry and her mother. Even though she couldn't see her mother, she was separated from her. She spoke of her, they wrote letters, that, it was just absolute devotion to her mother, who she worshipped. And the separation really affected Mary emotionally, but it also strengthened her Catholic identity. It made her even more strong and even more determined. And you mentioned Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury. She was a very maternal figure at court and one of Mary's strongest supporters. So she also took on that kind of maternal role for Mary and was really, really strong for her. So another huge blow to Mary was when Margaret Pole was executed in 1541 under the rule of Henry VIII. And that was another huge traumatic loss. She'd lost two key figures in her life that were both really, really maternal and had such an impact on Mary. So for her mother to die, for Margaret Pole to be executed, it was just a huge blow. I mean, it's amazing that she was left standing, basically, because it was so difficult for her. She was also very supported by Eustace Chapois. You will know about this, Scott, the Imperial ambassador, sorry. He was very trusted in Mary's circle, and he was very close to Mary, and he would really support her under hardship, and he would give her, political guidance, and he acted very much like a father to her. She saw him very much as a father figure.
Because he was quite close to Catherine as well.
That's right, yeah, absolutely. So there was that family connection, wasn't there?
Yeah, but he was quite close to Catherine, but he was kind of caught in the middle between Henry and Catherine.
Yeah.
I think that's one guy who walked a very thin line, basically, because of his devotion to Catherine. But he also had to prove himself to the king, who, as we do know, had spies everywhere. So, there's a chance Henry knew just how close Catherine and him were.
It's amazing, because he also didn't come to a terrible demise either, which is quite amazing. So this is kind of more of a positive outlook in some ways, isn't it? Despite what happens later on, quite a few of Mary's close advisors did survive. They died of natural causes sort of later on in life. But as you say, you would have thought Henry VIII would have been very distrusting of him, but he seemed to be allowed to be staying in the inner circle somehow, didn't he?
Do you think maybe Henry kept him in the inner circle to keep a close eye on him?
Quite possibly. Yeah, absolutely, quite possibly. So he acted as an advocate, but also with the Emperor Charles V of Spain. He was very important as well. So a relation of Catherine of Aragon, and he offered diplomatic protection. So she had quite a few powerful figures that were very protective of her. And Emperor Charles V was the cousin and a powerful supporter. And he supported her position later in marriage because Philip II was his son. So Mary was married to Charles V's son. So he was politically and emotionally important to her, a very, very important figure. And still talking about the people close to Mary and the people around Mary, Jane Dormer was a lady in waiting. She was one of Mary's closest personal companions. So she did have people around her that really cared for her and looked out for her. She was loyal and trusted. She remained devoted to Mary, and she later married into Spanish nobility. And then there was a lady called Susan Clarisseau, and she was the mistress of the robes. So she was very senior, and she was the lady who would choose what Mary would wear. She would basically be Mary's dresser. So she was a very close friend of hers as well. She was a long-time attendant who cared for Mary since childhood, so she had been around for a very long time. She was also a maternal figure throughout her life. So it's interesting, isn't it, how she had these older ladies around her that were very maternal to her, and that must have been very important, mustn't it?
She had very few young friends.
Yeah.
You know, her age, maybe
yeah,
just
you're
slightly
right.
younger.
They were all older. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They were all older. So she did have some close people around her. She had maternal people around her. She had father figures around her. Some of her closest sort of assistants were very supportive, but Mary was very emotionally attached to Philip, her husband. And though the closeness was not equally reciprocated, she did rely on him for support, even though much of the relationship, as I mentioned before, was quite distant. So even though they weren't close, he never truly loved Mary, he did support her, and she did get a lot from that relationship, even though it wasn't reciprocated. She felt like she had a husband that she could look up to, respect, and to love. Now, he looked up to and respected her, but he didn't love her, and that must have been quite difficult. Whether Mary actually knew that or not, we'll never truly know. But it was,
I think she would have known. She loved him, and he basically was just a marriage of convenience, as a lot of marriages were.
Absolutely.
I think very, very few marriages back then were actually for love. I mean, you can talk about, just jumping back to, Henry and Anne. Then you Henry and Jane Seymour. I think maybe two of them were out of love, possibly.
And
if you think about it, all Mary's life, she was never loved. She was looked after, but she never had that kind of love. If that makes sense.
But that romantic love, that true romantic love, probably really craved after. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, back then, children as young as 2 and 3 were betrothed to,
I know.
To other kids and stuff like that. But she, obviously, in her early childhood, and we say she was shunted from one place to another, and she never had that kind of romantic. He was a teenager, etc. And I know she was a very, very strong Catholic, and so her Catholic values stayed with her all through her life, but she never had that kind of romantic love, as you say.
No.
And I think that would have bore heavy on her as well.
Must have done, mustn't it?
Is anybody going to love me eventually?
I know.
In a scenario.
She must have felt quite deserted in so many ways, mustn't she? Losing so many people that were important to her, and then marrying somebody that married her out of duty, but not out of love, even though she absolutely adored him and loved him. So yeah, that must have been really, really difficult, mustn't it? Really difficult. But Mary supported Spain in the war against France, and in 1558, England lost Calais, its last territory in mainland Europe, and this was a major blow to national pride. So it basically didn't go down well at all. That was a huge blow to Mary and her rule, because it was a bad decision, and they lost Calais, and it was so that was like one of many blows that she took, basically. I'm going to talk about her death, but we are going to go back and talk about her, because I just, like I say, want to go through the timeline, and then we'll discuss it a bit more. So Mary died on the 17th of November 1558 at the age of 42, so she wasn't very old. But again, back then, in Tudor times, that wasn't a bad age, really, because bearing in mind...
No, that was a good... That was a good run-in.
And she was buried in Westminster Abbey. She's actually, believe it or not, she's buried with Elizabeth, her half-sister, Elizabeth I. They're in the same tomb in Westminster Abbey. And Elizabeth is on the tomb, a statue of her is on the tomb. And there is a tiny little plaque on the tomb in Westminster Abbey recognising Mary, even though the sisters are buried together. So that's really sad, isn't it? It's really, really sad to know that happened.
It's kind of, you know, shunned in life and shunned in death, basically.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So she was succeeded by her half-sister Elizabeth I that we'll talk about in a whole other session, who of course wanted then to restore all the Protestants. But when Mary died, Philip was stripped of his title. So this is Prince Philip of Spain. He was stripped of his title. He returned to Europe, leading Spain, but he outlived 3 more wives, and he actually died of illness in 1598 at the age of 71. So Mary's husband, you know, had a really good life. He married 3 more times and died, you know, of natural causes, basically in 71. So that was quite amazing, wasn't it? That, you know, Mary died, and you would think people would sort of go after him, wouldn't you, when Elizabeth took over? But no, he managed to go back to Spain quite successfully and continue to live his life. So he obviously had a happy life in the end, because I should imagine he probably married for love, didn't he, once, you know.
I would say Mary was, but is it true that I think it was 1557 that Mary thought she was pregnant again, and basically she said to Philip, you know, in the event of my death, basically, these aren't exact words, I want you to look after our child, and I want you to, you know, to reign basically until the child's old enough to take over. But it turned out that she wasn't pregnant.
Okay, so that could have been the 2 false pregnancies that she had, couldn't it? Yeah.
And this is when, you know, obviously then Mary dies, Elizabeth steps in, which will cover it another time. But I know she, you know, for what I gather, Mary did want Philip to not be king, but to take control of things.
So she quite possibly could have been worried about her health, because back then a lot of women died during childbirth, didn't they? So maybe she was thinking she was going to be producing an heir, but that she might not survive it, because she wasn't in the best of health. Let's face it, she had such a traumatic childhood that it really affected her later on in life, and she was very poor, sort of weakly, and, you know, not very healthy. So that probably was on her mind, wasn't it? That probably worried her. So that's why that's quite believable that she would have asked Philip to do that, to protect their future.
That they didn't protect their future king or queen. But then, as it turned out, you know, it was a false pregnancy, whatever happened. And so he was kind of out of a job, for want of a better word.
Yeah. So sadly she only reigned for 5 years. It was quite a short reign, wasn't it? But going back to what we're, you know, talking about her, apparently if we talk about looks and personality with Mary, she was very short, she was very slight, she had this lovely auburn coloured hair, she had blue-grey eyes, she was fair, pale and slim or thin. And she was very attractive when she was younger. She was a really attractive young lady, but she became very gaunt later in life due to illness, you know, like we're talking about, and all the stress that she had to deal with what happened to her mother, how her father treated her. So whenever you see portraits of her, she's very serious, very somber, you know, because she had portraits painted of her when she was older, not in her best light, because she was a very attractive young lady when she was young. Which is a shame in a way, isn't it? You know, that she's not remembered like that, because that's not how we remember her. It's not how we see pictures of her. You know, she's
remembered as this kind of, I don't want to use the word evil, but she's kind of very, you know, not to be messed with person.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there's that one particular, I think I used it in the post, where she's just sitting and you can see the skull, basically.
Yeah, and that's how she's remembered, sadly. And she was said to be quite a sort of serious person, but then she probably would be after all the trauma she'd been through. You know, she hadn't had a very light-hearted life so far, had she? So talking about her personality now, so Mary we know she was intensely religious. She was very committed to the Roman Catholic Church, but she was very careful about how she introduced that when she took the throne. She remained steadfast in her beliefs. You know, even during the Protestant reforms during her father's reign and threats to her life, she still remained steadfast. However, I don't know if you remember, but to spare her life, Eustace Chapuis, who we mentioned before, who was a senior advisor and connected to the Roman Empire, he urged her to sign a submission to her father, and she did actually sign it, because he said, if you don't sign it, you're going to lose your life, and it's such a waste, you know, when you can re-promote Catholicism if ever the crown comes to you, which exactly, you know, it absolutely did eventually, didn't it? So he was so strong in telling her, look, I know it goes against everything you want to do, but you need to sign this document, you need to sign this submission document. And she did, and that really did spare her life, because whether her father, Henry VIII, would have carried that out or not, we don't know, but there's a strong chance that he would have done, because we know he was ruthless.
I think we'll look at, you know, also we're talking about Mary, but look at Thomas More.
Yeah.
You know, he was executed for the same time because he would not sign. And he was told on quite a few occasions, especially by his own family, look, as you just said with Mary, it goes against what you believe in, Dad, but you're going to be executed. And, you know, so I think Henry would have had to have executed Mary.
You're probably right. He would have had to carry out, you know, what he'd done previously. And that particular story of Thomas More, that really makes me so sad, because I remember that his wife, you know, reading about that, researching about that, his wife and his children were begging him, just sign it. We need you. We want you with us. And he just wouldn't. His religion came first and he wouldn't, you know, and that just shows, doesn't it, how religion was so important to people back then, that they were prepared to lose their lives.
It was a major part of their life. So I think, you know, this is my opinion, but I think Henry would have executed Mary because of what he did to Thomas More. Because I think if he hadn't, he would have lost face. Yeah,
he would have been shown as weak.
And then, you know, other people might have jumped on the bandwagon as well. Say, well, he didn't execute Mary, so there's a chance he won't execute me, so I'm not going to sign.
Yeah, I know. But she did eventually sign. She did. And I think that was when she was allowed back to court. Obviously, we jumped forward to Mary becoming queen, but before all of that, you know, she was then allowed back to court, and she was allowed to mix with her father's council and everything, because she signed that submission. So eventually she was able to come back. But I think the relationship between her and Henry VIII, her father, must have been very strained because of what he had caused, what had happened. And Mary was so strong and steadfast, and she absolutely despised some of his wives, as she would, because her mother had been overthrown for Anne Boleyn. So she absolutely despised Anne Boleyn.
I was just going to say, hated Anne Boleyn.
Yeah.
You know, which is understandable, you know, because Anne Boleyn was the other woman. She was, you know, as you say, the way Catherine was treated when after Anne came on the scene, you know, and you know, her daughter sitting there, no matter what age she was, her daughter sitting there watching all this.
Yeah, I know. And if you think Elizabeth I, who becomes Elizabeth I, is Mary's half sister, they had opposing mothers, because Anne Boleyn was Elizabeth's mother, but actually the children, when they were young, got on very well. Even though she knew Anne Boleyn was Elizabeth's mother, they still got on. They were very close, and Mary absolutely adored her younger brother, even though her younger brother later on, when he was king, even at a young age, wanted to have her executed or threatened to have her executed. She absolutely adored her family when they were younger, but obviously the politics and religion, as they were older, kind of drew them apart. So it was really difficult times, wasn't it?
But and there was no normal family life. I know it's, you know, it's hundreds of years ago, but there was no kind of normal family life, you know.
No, I know, awful. You know, he sent all his children away from court, really, when you think about it, didn't he? Henry VIII didn't, you know, he hid his son away because he didn't want him to get ill. And ironically, he died at a very young age. He sent Mary away because of, you know, he declared her illegitimate. And he sent Elizabeth away. So they were all separated. It was such a harsh, life for them all. When you think they were born into royalty, how tough that must have been, especially for Mary, because she was the firstborn. She was, you know, she was the first rightful heir. So it was so difficult for her. But I think what happened to her in her younger years made her very strong-willed. She was very determined and resilient. She was particularly good at defending her legitimacy and her religion under very difficult circumstances. You know, she wasn't scared, even though she signed submission, she wasn't scared to do that. She still stuck by her religion. She was so deeply devoted to her mother, Catherine of Aragon, and to the Catholic cause. She was sensitive, she was emotional, she was vulnerable, especially due to the troubled childhood, obviously, that we've just spoken about. But as Queen, she was firm in her goal to restore Catholicism in England, even when it did make her unpopular. You know, she burnt lots of people at the stake. She was known as Bloody Mary because she started to burn Protestants. And we think as many as 300 were burnt at the stake, and she became known as being brutal and Bloody Mary. But again, when you compare it to her father, Henry VIII, and how many he killed, and then Elizabeth I after her, how many she killed, it seems very unfair that Mary is remembered as Bloody Mary, because she was a trailblazer, when you think about it, the first Queen ruler of England. And she was a trailblazer, and she should have more. She should be remembered posthumously better than she is, because it's a very negative look at her, isn't it? How many people known as Bloody Mary?
She didn't deserve the title Bloody Mary. Again, as you said, you know, as you said, Henry, roughly about 72,000 people.
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
You can't even contemplate how many that is per year, per week, per day. Elizabeth, you know, I can't even do the math with Henry, how many people that is. And so, you know, Elizabeth as well, the total with her, a few thousand. And you think Mary, she was tame, she was lenient.
Yeah.
You know, so why did Elizabeth no get some kind of title as well?
And yet it's the golden era. We'll go on to that, won't we, in the next session? But it's the golden era when Elizabeth took over. And I think it was a bit of a smear campaign on her sister to call her Bloody Mary, because she wanted to be known, Elizabeth I wanted to be known as the brilliant ruler, the good ruler. She was another hot-headed, red-headed, you know, child of her father, basically. She was another one who was very much like Henry VIII. Mary was strong and determined like her father, but had all of the lovely, gentle and religious qualities of her mother, whereas Elizabeth I was really staunch Protestant, very much like her father, you know, later on in life. But most importantly, carry on.
No, I think, you know, just still talk about the Bloody Mary title, you know, I mean, she got it, it's the same as, you know, if you think totally different people, but like George Mackenzie, he's known as Bloody Mackenzie, but he didn't get that title till about 120 years after he died, but people just labelled him as Bloody Mackenzie. But he never killed anybody, you know. He never executed anybody. And so you do have to wonder why folk named her that, you know. Was it because the sudden switch to being the going along with the Protestant side, and then bang, you know, she's tying Catholics, you know, she's tying Protestants to the stake all the time. So was it that shifted and made people think, you know, she's nothing but a bitch, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
That's just my way of thinking.
Yeah, I know. It is strange, isn't it? Because it's weird. Elizabeth I comes off really well as ruling for so many years and for being in the golden age. Henry VIII, when we think of Henry VIII, we think of him as executing all his wives and as a fat, oversized man who was ruthless. When we think of Mary, we think of Bloody Mary, who executed all these people. But actually, if you think of Henry when he was younger, and if you think of Mary before she executed those people, they were actually respected royal people. And we remember them in quite a negative light, don't we? It's quite interesting how we have that perception, because you don't always think of them in their younger years. When you think of going back to Henry VIII and how athletic, how young, how handsome he was, women swooning after him all the time. You know, we don't think of him like that. We think of this big fat man who died basically, you know, with ulcerated, smelly, horrible legs. So it's...
Aye, that's it. I'll just throw you another theory why she might have got the title Bloody Mary. Just, you know, we talk about Henry, Mary, Elizabeth. Henry executed, you know, say 72,000 people roughly for various reasons. You know, a lot of them were because basically their face didn't fit or they upset the king, but they were executed, you know, for treason or whatever. Elizabeth would have been along the same lines, executing people because they committed crimes, you know, according to the Queen. But with Mary, you know, people knew she was very, very devoted Catholic, and it was all Protestants that were getting executed. So maybe that they seen that as some kind of witch hunt.
Yeah.
You know, she's just taking her revenge on. I think if she'd executed people, you know, for treason and, you know, other stuff, she wouldn't have got that title. Again, just my thoughts, but I think that's why maybe they called her Bloody Mary, because maybe people seen this as a kind of witch hunt against the Protestants, because she finally had the chance and she finally had the power to do it.
And she wanted to avenge her mother's death, didn't she? You know,
she wanted to avenge Catherine.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why people saw her as Bloody Mary.
Yeah, you're right, but I just think it's sad how we remember her when she had so many good qualities. But it's how history has portrayed her and how she is remembered, isn't it? You know, in portraits, most portraits present Mary in a highly formal light, emphasizing her dignity, her Catholic identity, and her royal authority. But there's nothing emotional about her. You know, it's all very prim and proper and somber, always in black, representing the Catholic faith. As far as her legacy, Mary was known for being deeply religious, as we know. She was determined. Her legacy is quite mixed, however, because she's remembered for religious persecution, which is just what we're saying, and political difficulties during her reign. So she did come in very gently and softly and not immediately, you know, bring back Catholicism. But then she did rule with a little bit of an iron fist when she wanted to make an example of the Protestants. And again, like we said, really to avenge her mother. She had deeply conflicted feelings about her father, Henry VIII, because he shunned her, threatened to execute her, then brought her back to court. She never really knew where she stood. She didn't know, you know, she didn't know how to respect him, even though he was the king and he was her father. She probably was more fearful of him than anything. She adored her mother. You know, she mourned her mother's loss for the rest of her life because her mother was so powerful, had such an impact on her life. They were very, very close as mother and daughter, and that was really, really difficult for her. And as I mentioned before, she loved her little brother. She was so affectionate, you know, in his younger years. But despite his age, he tried to put pressure on her to drop her religion with threats, you know, when he was king and the council of killing her. So it was so difficult. Mary and Elizabeth, they behaved quite warmly towards each other for most of the time, despite, like we said, Elizabeth being Anne Boleyn's daughter and the cause of Catherine of Aragon's downfall. So she had such a kind of love-hate relationships with all of her family, apart from her mother, her beloved Catherine of Aragon. But as far as hauntings, it's interesting, Scott. I don't know if you know of anything, but she's not necessarily reported to haunt any particular location. However, there is a folklore, which I'm sure you know about, that if you sit in a darkened room with mirrors,
the mirror,
summon her. Yeah. If you chant her name repeatedly, Bloody Mary, I'm not going to say it, but if you do it 3 times in a darkened room with mirrors, she is supposed to appear to you. You know, there is folklore that she does appear. I'm not going to try it. I don't know if you want to, but I'm not going to.
I think that's just, you know, folklore. I think that's just a story that's been
it could well
handed down, you know, through the years. But no, you're right. To my knowledge, there's very, very few Tudors said to, you know, haunt different places. You know, there is also Jane Seymour, Anne Boleyn, Catherine of Aragon's reported to have been spotted so, you know, a few times. Henry,
Okay.
he's reported to have been spotted, but you don't really hear a lot,
No,
you know.
no, you
I'm
don't.
not saying that there's not, you know, but to my knowledge, but Bloody Mary, you know, I've heard the Bloody Mary. It's featured in films as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You
And
know.
obviously she's got a drink named after her. We all know the drink, don't we? Bloody Mary. You know, it's named after her, interestingly. But yeah,
Vodka tomato juice in it.
yeah, something like that, I think. Yeah, definitely tomato juice, isn't it? With something alcoholic in it.
I'm not a fan of the vodka.
No, well, I'm not a fan of tomato juice, so we wouldn't be any good drinking a Bloody Mary, would we?
No, I don't like vodka. Tomato juice is all right. I tried it many years ago. Tomato juice is drinkable, but no, I don't touch it anymore. But haunting wise, no.
No, you don't hear much at all about her, do you? Interestingly, but yeah,
No,
it's sad in a way, because and obviously Elizabeth I, who we'll talk about next time, she was the daughter of Henry VIII and of Anne Boleyn. So she's still part of that Tudor dynasty, but she is remembered for the Elizabethan times. So we're kind of moving away from Tudor times when we talk about Elizabeth I. So in some ways, finishing with Mary Tudor, it kind of feels like we're closing that chapter altogether, which is sad, really, isn't it? Because it's fascinating period.
It does, doesn't it? You know,
but it's sad
say,
in a way.
That was the Tudor era. Basically over after, you know, Elizabeth came into power, and they moved into even though she was a Tudor kind of, you know, in a way, she's still but I am moving into the Elizabethan. That speech is on fire tonight.
You sound very Scottish tonight.
Well, I hope so. You know, I do a good I can do a good Scottish accent. Thanks very much.
I should think so too.
But I'm going to have to swat up on the Elizabethan period, because
I always do my research before we do these sessions, because I find it really fascinating. I think as you get older, you become more interested in history, don't you? When you're younger and at school, or you think, oh, it's boring, I don't want to know about history. But now I love it and I'm fascinated, and I love doing my research about it. So I will also do research about it. I know a fair bit about it, but I also like to do my research and get my facts and figures, you know, so that you make sure you get fairly accurate details. I mean, we're amateur historians at the end of the day. So if we've got years wrong, facts and figures wrong, we'll hold our hands up now and apologise. But we do.
Well, that's it. You know,
and we do our research, don't we? So.
You can study something as much as you want, research it, read, you know, X amount of websites, etc. And I've said this with Jamie Christopher, you know, when the shows we've done together before, I have said in the past, you know, none of us are experts. You know, we will get dates wrong, we'll get dates wrong, we'll probably get some names wrong, places wrong, but everybody does.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but we do our best to get, you know, accurate information. And if it's something that you're passionate about and interested in, I think it's quite enjoyable to research it and look, you know, read about it. I really enjoy doing that. But yeah, the whole Tudor dynasty, the whole Tudor era, it's nothing but sadness when you think about it. There's nothing happy about it. We've said this about Henry VIII's life before. He was so privileged. He was the king. He had the court. He could have anything he wanted. But he had, you know, quite damaged marriages. The 3 children that he had all had issues because of him. He had issues with them. You know, the whole era is sad. It's sad, isn't it? There's nothing really happy about it, which you know, other than the history they've left us with.
No, you're totally right. You know, it is, even though it's what I put it down as one of the most influential and you know, spoke about eras in history. It's you see, it's probably the saddest era in history, even though, you know, what they did, obviously the biggest thing was Henry breaking away from the Catholic Church, etc.
That was the biggest thing, wasn't it? It was such a huge event for him to do that in the first place. That kind of changed history forever. And I think that's probably why he's continually talked about, and the Tudors are continually talked about because of that, was such a had a huge impact on the country, on Europe, you know, on religion, politics, absolutely everything that affected by that one decision, because he wanted to be with Anne Boleyn, only 3 years later to have her beheaded. I mean, it's just ironic, isn't it, really? It's irony in the biggest form. It's just crazy.
As you say, I mean, there's been many monarchs since then, you know, and they've all done great things for the country and etc. But Henry VIII just seems to be the one that always sticks out.
Yeah, it's something very compelling, isn't there? Something very compelling about him. Even as I said, we still, when anybody pictures Henry VIII, they picture him big, stuffing his face with food. But there was so much more to him before all of that. And that's what I'm trying to say. We remember them in history, but we need to think carefully about who they were before their demise. Because remembering Bloody Mary as Bloody Mary, it doesn't seem fair to her, because she was a beautiful person. And remembering Henry VIII as this big fat ogre doesn't seem fair to him, because he was an amazing person before he was corrupted or had mental health issues, whatever it was back then that affected him, and you know, where his personality changed, didn't it, basically. We want to try and remember the positives if we can, because it was transformational in history what happened with the Reformation, but absolutely fascinating. Very sad, but we want to remember it in a positive light, don't we?
But
if you think about it, those people were amazing.
They were all amazing. The thing is, history tends to remember, you know, these people for the bad things they did, or the evil that they did. You know, just going back to Henry. I mean, he was. I was going to say christened. He wasn't crowned. He was actually christened. Don't know where that came from. He was crowned when he was 18, I believe. You know, and people tend to forget that he was 18 years old.
Yeah.
He's the King of England. He did, you know, and he did make that big speech when he was crowned, saying, "I will be a just and fair king."
Yeah.
You know, and I will treat all my people. I want to make England better for my people, basically.
Yeah.
And, you know, but he did, you know, he still executed people, because as a king, he still had to make his mark. He still had to say to people, I'm a nice guy, but don't touch me. You know, but, you know, years down the line, after his jousting accidents, etc., you know, he turned into he turned into this big kind of ogre. They still had his nice moments, I suppose, you know, through the years. But as you say, he was remembered for, you know, the people that he executed. And I think there's that one famous picture, painting, when he's standing, you know, and he's got all his regalia on and all the rest of it. I think that's the image that sticks in everybody's head.
Yeah.
You know, and it was, you know, he was some size when he passed away. I mean, I've been here. I don't know if you've been here tour or no. I've been here 2 or 3 times, and I've, you know, the famous.
I've been there,
and you see the difference in size.
Yeah.
So, you know, and obviously his last set is quite big, shall we say?
Yeah.
So it just shows you what actual size he was. But you know, if you look back at his sort of kind of first early sets of armour, they're very, very thin.
Yeah, and he was
slim,
gorgeous. He was handsome. Yeah, absolutely. So he was handsome and lovely. Mary was a beautiful soul, a beautiful person, and very pretty when she was younger. And Elizabeth was as well. You know, Elizabeth is remembered more positively for the longer, more positive reign she had, but she still murdered thousands of people. But we'll talk about that in the next one. But yeah, it's fascinating how we have that perception of somebody from history. But actually, when you look into them, when you research them, and you look at the beginning of when they were born, what their childhood was like, it makes you look at that whole life, not just that person that you remember for being an executioner or a brutal ruler. It does make you look at them differently, because they were a human being. They had a life like you and I did, but it was just different circumstances, different time, lots of privileges, but then lots of curses when you think about it. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, isn't it, is what they say. And I think that's,
Indeed.
there's a lot to be said for that. It's so true, isn't it?
It is when you think of them. But no, that kind of wraps up our Tudor era. We might touch on it again as time goes by. Who knows?
Well,
Don't get upset.
We might do a little revision.
Aye, don't, I thought you were going to burst any tears there or something, you know.
I got my little tissue.
No. Be strong. Come on, women. Be strong. Get a grip.
Yeah, no, I will. And we've got the lovely Elizabeth I to talk about next time. And she's a fascinating character and obviously ruled for a long time. So there's quite a lot to talk about with her. So she also deserves a session of her own, really. Yeah.
Then we're going to cover Mary Queen of Scots, where my lovely wife will be on with us.
Yeah, that would be good. That'd be lovely.
She's a big Mary Queen of Scots fan.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I quite like Mary as well. Another Mary.
That kind of links in, doesn't it? Because if we do Elizabeth, kind of Mary links in with that, because obviously we know what happened to Mary Queen of Scots. So that will be quite relevant to do that, won't it?
It will, dear. But I think we'll wait. So I'll keep a hold of you just after we come off for a wee second. I know you need to get to your bed because you're up early in the morning. I've heard the sock story.
Busy lady.
Yeah, you're a very, very busy lady. So where can people find you?
So people can find me on Facebook, Tarot Tracy. If they can't find me, because I know my profile is a little bit private, I don't know what I'm doing really, but they can find me in your list, so they can link into me that way. I've said before, I do tarot card readings. I teach tarot.
Very good.
Oh, bless you.
Very good.
I teach tarot as well, as you know. I've got a little apprentice not too far from you. And I do past life regression, which I'm really loving at the moment. I've worked with quite a few clients recently, and that I know I bang on about it, but honestly, unless you experience it for yourself, it's really difficult to explain to somebody. But it's just a wonderful experience, even if it's quite a traumatic past life that you go back to, which sometimes it is, to be fair. We always do a lot of healing. So if there are issues in this lifetime that you've carried forward from even your childhood, or past lives before your childhood, before this lifetime, we can do loads of healing. So it's a very good, positive thing to do. And I absolutely love doing that. So anybody who's interested in that can sort of get in touch with me. And yeah, that's it really. That's me. And then you'll find lots of our Tudor chats on Scott's channel on Paranormal in History.
Yeah, you'll find them all there. So give this lady a look up. She is really good at tarot. She has got a little apprentice, namely our daughter, who's coming on leaps and bounds with tarot as well. And Barry John, he'll vouch for that as well. He sampled her tarot readings as well. The last time we did the big bazaar on.
Absolutely.
But we're going to we'll talk to him again soon, I think. He's just back from Rome.
I know, he's a little gallivant, isn't he? He's always off.
I guess about, doesn't he? Fairly jet set.
Wow, I know he does. Yeah, I know he does. He's always on.
I was talking to him this morning, actually. He's doing Parameet this weekend.
I know. I don't know how he does it. He's got more energy than I've got. He's always all over the place.
I know, but I was chatting to him this morning. So he'll be back on soon. But we're going, so that winds up our Tudor stuff, folks. As Tracy says, you can jump back in our YouTube channel if you want to watch it for day one or tie it up to yourself. The next up is Elizabeth I, so we're moving into a different era. So a big thanks to my wee lovely co-host, Carol Tracy.
Thank you.
I know. I've sent you my PayPal details, haven't I?
No problem.
We're back this Sunday. We're back. Our daughter's back this Sunday, 7 p.m. with another quiz.
Oh yeah, am I on that? Am I on that panel? Did you mention something about John Azuna? Because if he's on it, I want to be on it.
I was talking to John this morning as well.
My John.
He's go on, have a quick swoon before we go.
Bless him.
He's actually just been offered a part in another big movie.
Oh wow!
But I was talking to him this morning. He's still coming on. I'll need to see the boss. I'll need to speak to Tayami and find out, you know. I know Rigger and Andy Fitzpatrick coming on.
Oh wow, I think I need to
on the last
John
one.
then. I think John needs more support from me, doesn't he?
Okay. I'll speak to Tayami if we see if I can wangle you an invite. Unbelievable. So we'll be back on Sunday at 7 p.m. with my darling daughter, who will be the quiz mistress. So we're going to go, folks, because that's us done for the night. So enjoy the rest of your week. I give this young lady a wee, keep going the wrong way, a wee look up. All right, folks, so take care and thanks for watching. Bye. Bye.